Let's try again. Hello, everyone. We had kind of a hiccup when we started. We are having such technical things. I'm going to blame the alignment of the stars or possibly my internet. I don't know, but we're good. Hello and welcome to this very live episode of To the Moon, Allison, where we talk about the top and trending books in science fiction, fantasy, speculative fiction, and romance. And I am breaking all of those rules today because I'm your host, Allison Martine Hubbard, author of works of contemporary fiction and romance and speculative fiction. And I'm so excited to be joined today by a friend and author, Finley Turner, who is here to talk about her debut thriller, which doesn't even belong on this show, but I like, it's my show. I can have you on if I want you on. Welcome, Finley, and tell us a little about yourself and your debut, The Engagement Party.
Thank you for having me and breaking all of your rules.
They're my rules to break, so it's fine.
The perks of having you as my beta reader.
Well, I was going to say, this is, I think, the first time I've had someone on, not that just I had read the book before it came out, but I was actually a beta reader here, so I was able to read it just recently and see changes you had made. And we were just talking about some of the changes. I'm not allowed to talk about most of those because they would give way too much away. But this is like, okay, of course I want to have you on my show, even if it technically, I'm like, Engagement Party, that sounds like it could be a romance. Romance readers, this is not the one you're looking for.
No.
Look at the cover. It's not going to be cutesy and stuff. It's not terrifying, but it is a thriller. So it's not like nightmare kind of thing. That's horror. We will definitely keep that to Vox Vomitus because Jennifer makes me do horror because she hates me or she loves horror. I'm not sure which. But Finley, welcome to the show and tell us a little bit about yourself and your debut, The Engagement Party.
Well, so since we're on the topic of like what is allowed on the show, this definitely is not a romance at all, despite it being about an engagement. It's about Cass. She is a New York City girl and she gets into this whirlwind relationship where she doesn't really know much about her fiance. His parents throw her a surprise engagement party. And at that party, which is for the uber wealthy, a dead body is found. And who not to blame, but the only person people don't know, which is the main character, Cass. Poor girl.
It's like, you know what? I didn't ask for any of this. I thought I was just getting married. And then, oh, hey, you said you were from money. You didn't mean from all of the money in like the entire state.
Yes.
So, yeah, you've got a lot of like classism going on here. And there's very much that rich girl classism, kind of gossip girl vibe, even though you're not set in New York.
Yes.
And I don't know if you've seen Fall of the House of Usher, but I was getting strong Fall of the House of Usher vibes from like, oh yeah. And obviously I read it, then saw Fall of the House of Usher, and then just read it again. And I was getting those vibes and like casting people inappropriately, I'm sure. Like none of those people I'm sure are right. But I was definitely getting those vibes of like, you kind of want to see the rich come down and eat the rich and all that stuff. But this poor girl's like stuck there going, I wanted to wear my paint splattered shoes and they made me change. And now there's people dying. So please get me out of here.
Yeah, she's totally taken by surprise, and what a huge compliment. I'm currently watching The Fall of the House of Usher. I think I have one more episode.
You have one more? Okay,
one more episode.
I probably couldn't spoil anything at this point because you've seen just about everything, most of the different horrible ways people die. Fortunately, nothing in your book is nearly as gruesome as some of the stuff that happens there. Guys, if you haven't watched it and you have a small gag reflex, there's some episodes you're going to need to skip.
All
I mean, okay, there's a few where the deaths are sad, but they aren't horrible to look at. And there are some that I'm like, well, I need to watch something else before I go to bed because I'm never sleeping again. Thanks a lot, Mike Flanagan.
Oh, what a crazy mind, Mike Flanagan.
No. Yours is not a horror. Yours is definitely that thriller, that suspense. And you build that even from the very beginning with things happening on social media and texts going on and just these little plants going on and oops, I found cocaine. Sorry, that happens later. That does not happen in the very beginning of the book, but there's a lot of stuff happening where you build these layers. And can you start by just telling us, like, how did you come up with the idea of this girl who marries into or is going to marry into this ridiculous family that she knows like nothing about? Finley, did you marry into money that you didn't know was coming?
Oh, I wish.
Yeah, me neither. I married a teacher. That's like, there's not going to be money coming from that. Like if anybody's going to be finding a cash pot, it would be me with a bestseller. Maybe it's not the teachers. They have like salary caps.
Yeah.
And, it's It's fine. We'll be fine. But I did not marry into like a estate level thing. And I guess you didn't either. I mean, your house is lovely, but it's not a mansion with like entire wings.
No, my house is not a mansion, and I'm actually in a closet. This is a closet.
That's a really fancy closet. I think you just elevated your house there by saying that is a closet. You said the room next to you had green. You didn't tell me you weren't in a room right now.
No, I'm in a closet and there's no vent. So if I pass out, it's because I'm in a closet.
All right, well, we should worry about your airflow later. So take some deep breaths. I should have gotten you like a respirator. Before we went live, we were trying to make sure we had connections. I wasn't even thinking about basics like air. But you'll be fine. So what made you think, okay, we're going to have this girl, Cassandra Baptiste, whose name is very, very fancy for Cass, who's not all that fancy herself.
I know, right?
And she's going to be brought to this party for a family she knows. She's not even sure who's in this family. Let's just start with that. Like, she doesn't know the names of half the people there. Like, okay, there's the dad's name. Guessing the mom has a name, but no one's told me yet.
Yeah, that was my little way of poking fun at Southerners, which I am one, of always addressing male to the husband, Mr. and Mrs. Husband's first name and last name. So
I'll laugh at that because I have one of my favorite cookbooks is actually called Pirate's Pantry, despite my children calling it Pirate's Panties. And all of it, it's like
a different book.
I know, different book, but it all has these recipes and it's contributed by the different people. And it's all like Mrs. So-and-so, so-and-so. And it's always the husband's name. So it's like Mrs. Frederick Johnson, Mrs. something. And then all the vegan recipes are by like a woman. It's like Ms. So-and-so, and she has her name, and it's all the vegan recipes. Like, you put those vegan recipes in there, and you tell the patriarchy, we are having tofu tonight, and not whatever you brought in from the swamp, because a lot of those things are like, hey, this is what we shot. I'm like, I don't know what a teal is. A teal is a color. They're like, no, teal is also a bird. We're not having that for dinner. There's no teal in these books. The food described in your books sounded really, really good, and as did the coffee and all the booze.
Yes, and interestingly enough, I have had some criticism so far about the amount of alcohol in
the
book.
Have they not seen how people down there drink?
Well, I mean, like, yeah, we drink a lot down here, but also there is a party in the title, so I feel like I gave a fair warning.
Warning, and I think you also show the effects of it in ways that show this is not a pastime you should engage in without consequence. So it's not like, oh, look, they're all doing this. I have read books, and we have laughed at the fact that there are books where it's like, how is it these women are in their 40s, of which I am, and all they're doing is drinking all day long, and they still have banging bods, because if I drank like that, my liver would have just died, first off. I mean, I'm worried about whether my body itself externally would be fine. My liver just gone if I'm just putting away the wine the way these people are. But you make a very good social commentary on it, though, really early on, because Cass, who does not come from this world, is like, gee, that's funny. Day drinking here is seen like that's a thing of privilege, that we can do this. But if a poor person would do that, they would be seen as lazy and déclassé and all these things. So it's all about, oh, well, if you're rich and you do that, it's fine. But if you're not, how dare you go get a job, you lazy, you loafing thing who has no point in life. Yeah.
Yeah. The rich in real life and in this book definitely get away with a lot more than anybody else might. And I think another reason that I made Cass not impoverished or anything, just an average person, was just to show that even though she's not hurting for money from her family, there's such a huge gap between how rich she might be versus how insanely like billionaire rich these people are. Like, exactly. There's just an intense gap in behavior too. These people are they're built different.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, you portray Cass as someone, let's see, she's got a steady job, she's college educated. You are not doing like Cinderella from the literal ashes. You're talking about someone who most of us readers would probably relate to, going, yeah, I went to school, or I had some kind of training, and I work a job, and I don't have things just handed to me. And then she's entering this world where that's definitely not the standard that she's expected to live up to, or what the person that she thinks she knows was raised in. And it's like, okay, you're starting to be a little different than what I thought when you got down and gave me this really nice ring. And maybe I'm looking at that a little differently, going, do I want this? I'm not even wearing my engagement. I never wear my engagement ring unless I'm at a wedding of all things, because it just gets everywhere and gets caught in my hair of all stupid stuff. And then you have to like pull the hair out of the prongs. So I usually just wear my wedding band, but I'm like, there's nothing there. It's just this, but yeah. So I like that you had that juxtaposition. And I'm sorry if anybody was commenting on the alcohol. First off, the alcohol was probably delicious. Most of it sounded really good.
It was all very expensive brands that I picked.
It's fiction. Yeah, you had like Blanton's at one point. Yeah. And that made me stop and go, if I was there, I wonder if they have Angel's Envy, because that's what I really
I'm sure they have it.
But yeah, I mean, I'm sure they have all of it up there, and probably the stuff I like is lower shelf because I'm not that classy.
Me neither.
Like, I don't even know what that tastes like. I'll stick down here. I don't need the fancy bottle. And you point out things like the waste and the excess of it, like, because Cass makes a comment of like all these people just leaving their cups around. Those are probably $100 cups full of glass. That's the liquid. That's not cheap, and you just left it there and wandered off. Okay.
Yeah, I've had the great privilege of being invited to a very expensive wedding, and everybody there was a great person, but you can tell as people get drunker, they care less and less about waste. I'm a little bit of a tree hugger too. So it's kind of commentary on like a little bit of consumerism and just not thinking about what you're consuming, whether it's items like a 3-carat diamond engagement ring or
chocolate croissant that Murray left on his plate. And I'm like, first of all, I would like the croissant if you're not going to eat it. I love that with my children. And I joke that Finley, you're a mom too. I don't know if your kids are of the age yet where they're just leaving food lying around. And I'm like, who opened this and had one bite and left it? Because then you know what happens? Then I have to eat it, whether I want it or not, because I don't like wasting food. And then I wonder like, why do I have this? Oh, that's probably from all the things that I ate that I probably shouldn't have without even really thinking, because it was left there. And I'm going, this is half a packet of the Oreo minis. I like Oreo minis. In they go. So, I mean, it's that same kind of mentality of if you're brought up thinking, well, you don't waste, not just because of the resources, but because other people, they clearly weren't the ones told there are starving children. We were told that. I don't think they were ever told. They were probably told there are starving children and it's your family's fault that they're starving. Too bad to be them. So.
Yeah, I don't think Beatrice or Philip, her future parents-in-law, I don't think they ever talked to their children about the hardships of anybody but themselves and what they perceive to be their hardships, which is all right.
Yeah, the perceived hardships. I do like how you put that, because so here you have this thing when there's this engagement party. Cass doesn't know she's coming to. Cass knows very little about the family she's coming to meet and be part of. And then things start going wrong. Not just, okay, eventually there's a dead body, but the dead body is not on page 1. So there's littler things that happen that are kind of niggling at her in the back of her mind about things are not quite right here. People are acting in ways I don't like. I don't want to give away one of the spoilers. That's one of my favorite things about who some of the people are in the family and how she meets some of them. But you handled that in such a way. I remember that for me the first time, like, oh, I love this. And I'm glad you didn't tweak that, because that was like one of my favorite little moments of, oh, these people are just terrible.
Yes.
Just not even care about somebody else's feelings or making guests feel comfortable. I mean, I think that's one of the things, because this is set in the South and we have this idea of Southern hospitality. And on one hand, they tout it. And on the other hand, they are the worst hosts ever. Not just because somebody dies, because I mean, that's a whole new low of like, not everyone survives the party. That's a bad party.
Party pooper.
Party pooper. How dare you die on me? Literally, you died on me. But how they treat the people who are supposed to be staying there, and how the people are like kind of told, hey, in this house, we do it this way, whether you like it or not, from personal conduct to personal dress to all sorts of things.
And not letting your son sleep in the same bedroom or even wing as his fiance who he lives with. That's not a spoiler, but like it's just the facade of being well behaved.
Yeah, it's that propriety that it's like, dude, they've lived together for the last couple months and they're getting married. Yeah. And I mean, if you really want to have the propriety of they're not in the same room, at least have them on the same floor, because she gets lost a lot. And I feel her because I get lost a lot. And I'm the kind of person, if I go to a hotel, it doesn't matter that I'm not staying in fancy hotels. I get off the hotel elevator and I'm like,
which way?
Where am I supposed to be going? And those are labeled. Can you imagine being in this big old house? Nothing's labeled. She doesn't want to wander into the wrong person's room when she's just trying to find the toilet, because
right.
That's That's unsightly. Even though some of the toilets, not the toilets themselves, but the bathrooms are more elegant than anything in my entire house. This is just a screen, by the way. The rest of the house does not. Everybody always is like, oh, that's so nice. I'm like, yeah, it's just so you don't have to see what's going on behind me. We just keep the illusion right here.
Yeah, there's a stroller, like, right, you can kind of see it. Oh, so it's not like I have a very fancy room either.
Well, it's the stroller, and there's no child in the stroller right now.
No.
Okay, then it's fine. She's like, baby's right here. It's baby's first
interview. Taking a nap, much needed.
That's one of the reasons we went earlier, is to work around naps, because that's what we got to do as moms. I know that I was this close to having to say, we're going to have to reschedule again, because last week I had the kids off because it was the Tuesday teacher in service. Mm-hmm. And one of mine did the whole, I fell asleep early, which he sometimes does when he's sick. So I was monitoring him very closely. He's not sick, so he was at school. But if I had him here, there would be no way I could do that, because he does not fit in a stroller. And he cannot be quiet either. So there's that. But there are no children. There are no children in this book. They're all adult children, even if they sometimes behave like little children, like spoiled toddlers and things like that. I'm assuming none of these are based on any of your actual relatives or any of that. Like, these are my brothers.
I get asked that a lot, and I think it's like out of fear for people who I know who haven't read the book yet. They're like preparing themselves, like, okay, the antagonist is going to be me, right? I'm the murderer. So no, nobody's based off real people, but I do put little Easter eggs for my family and friends in there. Like Blanton's is my husband's, one of his favorite whiskeys. So like little tiny things, but
that's a nice thing though. That's hey, look, I included something that's special, not look, I murdered you.
Yeah. One day he did ask me, like, so a lot of the men in your books are like not great people. Are you going to kill me one day? I was like, no, but if I do, I'll get a book deal out of it, maybe.
Yeah. Well, did he mean in real life, or did he mean in one of the books, or did he mean whatever fashion he's just a little concerned about?
He didn't specify, so I'm assuming he meant both. But no, there will be no murder happening.
And that's a good thing. Maybe could have put in the prenup, I will not kill you in real life or in any of my fictional works. Any resemblance between you and dead bodies and or unfaithful, just horrible human people who happen to be male are merely coincidental, but maybe treat me nicer. I'm just saying.
It is fun to write really bad people, and I'm sorry that they sometimes just happen to be the men. But in this book, there are really horrible women too. So I'm not whatever a misogynist is for men. I can't think of the word right now.
Misogynist for men.
Yeah.
Like just like a man hater. I mean, I've used to hear the term. One of my friends kept getting called in high school, and I apologize for this term. I did not make it up. They called her a feminazi because she was like a staunch feminist, and she's just like, I just won't take your bullshit. That doesn't make me a feminazi. That makes you just annoying, and I've dealt with you enough. I was wondering, it's like, I did this with Fall of the House of Usher, of like ranking how horrible each character was and whether they deserve what happened to them. I could easily feel like if you had a book club, I don't know if you have like a book club set of questions, but that could be one of them, is ranking the horribleness of the various people.
That's one.
Because I felt like, you root for certain characters and then you're like, not rooting for you anymore, or you're not rooting for somebody and you're like, oh yeah, I'm on your team now, and you were not on their team before. And there's certain people that you're like, you can just go die in a horrible blaze right now. I don't need you to stick around because you're pretty horrible. And who invited you? Seriously, who invited you? And the answer is the mom. The mom invited.
Yes, the mom is the puppeteer of everything, and that's clear from the get-go. But in terms of like unlikable characters, there are so many of them, and I would say even Cass, the main character, she is like a complex woman, young woman too, and I think it's more fun to write people who have clear issues, and some people just, they might like them or they might not. But I don't want them to be like, a YA hero where it's clear that you're supposed to love them. Like, those books are fun to read, but I want to write really messy, kind of like she's judgmental sometimes, but she's sensitive to being judged, just like me, just like, oh, you maybe, just like everybody I know. And I think sometimes with the like whole unlikable main character, usually it's a woman. So we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, but that's, I think, because we hold women up to these really ridiculous standards that you cannot write a good female main character without somebody complaining, because if they have the slightest flaw, they're unlikable. I thought you wrote a very realistic person, because like, I don't want to spoil what makes Cass imperfect, besides you mentioned some of the judgmental stuff, but again, there's more. She has a history. We get into it in the book, and I don't want to spoil any of that she's not a perfect person, but she's not a horrific monster, and she doesn't go out of her way trying to just like, hey, I'm here, I'm gonna instantly destroy this party that I'm coming to. Like, no, she's trying, and there are times during the party where I felt for her. I'm like, I've wanted to get out of places like that, and then there's somebody's hand dragging you back in, and then you're just like, I just need air, and they're like, no, you can't get any air. You'll just have to suffocate, like Finley in the closet. Knock twice if you need to open the door to get more air. But that's the protagonist standard we hold women to, that if they are even the slightest bit imperfect, they're unlikable. Because I didn't find her unlikable, but I can hear people saying, oh, well, she had this stuff going on, and therefore she's unlikable, and she didn't always make the perfect choices. There are many times I'm yelling at the screen because I was reading it on a screen going, Cass, what are you doing? That is a very bad idea. Cass, go back to your room. What are you doing? Go back to your room. No, you don't want to drink that. No.
Stop drinking.
Seriously, stop. All of them should just take the drink, put the drink down. Mine's just coffee, I swear, but theirs, But if you have too perfect a character, and you get away with this in some of the YA stuff, then you get called the Mary Sue. She's too perfect. She's unrelatable. She's boring. She's boring. No one wants to read a completely perfect character. So I personally think you struck a really good balance, that you were, someone that I could relate to, where she has some skeletons in her closet, a little bit of it. Like you said, she's messy. She's not sometimes literally messy, like, paint splatter. She's a set designer. What do you expect? You can't do that.
She's an artist. And I are artists. We're probably messy in the background. That's why I'm zoomed in on my face. You can't see
the
anything
screen. Else. Super messy, and I'm not even I don't even have paint as an excuse. Like my middle kid is the painter. I'm just typing, but I have papers everywhere and stuff everywhere and half printed stuff. And there's a lot of markers and crayons in my house at any given point, like on the floor. I mean, there's a marker here. I don't know why. This isn't mine, but this is my husband's desk. So anything I find, I blame on him. But it's also children's stuff. Like there's Captain America over there. I don't know why.
How did that get there?
I don't know. But the idea that, okay, she's not expected to have every hair in place at all times, as if that's a character flaw, because that's not a character flaw. But if you did write a character that she was just perfect and every single choice was the exact right one, and she was always doing the right thing, always jumped to the right conclusion, always gave somebody exactly the right benefit of the doubt, but held their feet to the fire for the exact right amount of point. I mean, I feel like that's a hard thing too, because you manage relationships really well through this, because I've sometimes read things where, and I won't throw other authors under the bus, even if I might want to, because they're like selling billions of books, and I'm just like, why? These are not my thing. That's okay. But that they don't act the way humans would in these situations. And I feel like sometimes Cass's decisions are like, no, Cass, don't do that. But generally they made sense. And I can go like, yeah, I can see me doing that. Or I can see me being so stressed out that I would, because so many of her decisions here, there's a little bit of duress going on, like with the body and like murder accusations.
Yeah, just a little dead body to spice up your life.
Everybody wants that at the engagement party. Everyone will be talking. And then what's funny, and again, I don't want to spoil, and there's another thing that happens at the engagement party that is kind of a bombshell, and people seem to be more interested in that than like, oh, there's a dead body. Oh, but did you hear this?
A little drama and gossip. Like at every party, somebody does something embarrassing or a little faux pas. And people are talking about it. Like that's just human nature to talk about what other people are doing. And that's just domestic suspense. It's a lot of, did you mean to say that? Did you do that on purpose? There's a lot of wondering by both the narrator and the reader. It's like, what are you doing? What are you thinking?
How much
are you trying to be mean?
Yeah. Are you trying to be mean? Are you incompetent? Are you drunk? Are you early onset dementia, perhaps? Like what was the motive behind this? Was there a motive? Were you just kind of dumb? Like,
or drunk. A lot of drunk people.
There are a lot of drunken mistakes happening here. But so this is your debut, and this is coming out. It's coming out very soon, but it's not out just yet.
Came out last Tuesday.
Oh, Tuesday.
So A fresh newborn.
Baby book.
Yeah.
And was this the first book that you queried with? Was this the book that got you the agent and everything? Because I remember beta reading it, but I don't remember where you were in the process. So for people who are like, I don't know what any of this means, for people who are like outside of the literary world, first off, you're lucky because it's kind of crazy in here. But to get a traditional book deal, you usually need to query with one book, you sign with an agent. That may or may not be the first book that actually gets sold. Mm-hmm. So tell us a little bit about how it got from your ideas up here to it's now a baby newborn book, not in the stroller next to you.
That's a good question because, you know, we like to put on the front that we were successful from the get-go, which is not true for me. This is the second book that I wrote. The first book was the one that got me my agent, and this was March 2020 when I got my agent right before lockdown.
Right, when everything stopped in the whole world.
Yes, and I quickly had to part ways with the agent for reasons we won't go into. But then I immediately had to start querying again as lockdown was happening.
That's not fun.
And it was like, oh.
Well, and here's the thing. For people who aren't in the world, they may not realize that a couple things happened during lockdown. First off, everybody decided they also wanted to write a book. Mm-hmm. So there were a lot of books just showing up from people who they had other jobs. And then they're like, well, I'm stuck here. I might as well write a book. So we got some amazing new authors out of it. But there were also a lot of books that maybe weren't quite ready. But they're like, here we are. We are ready to also be seen by everybody else. And it slowed things down. But on the industry side of it, there was a lot of uncertainty about what was going to happen. So everything slowed down. So like when publishing slows down, it's just like this trickle down effect till the point where agents can't keep up with the manuscripts. They aren't signing more clients because they've got clients that haven't sold their manuscripts. And usually responsible agents don't take on a bunch of new clients when they're still trying to find homes for the books or the clients they already have. Some will do it anyway, but you never know. They all have their different workloads. But yeah, that's a hard time. So, you know, my hat's off. I'm not wearing a hat. My hat's off to you for like going through that, because I was in kind of similar time periods of like, I signed just after lockdown the first time. I'm on my second agent as well. Yeah. And it is a weird time. High five on that. But yeah, like to have done it in 2, that's actually pretty fast compared to a lot of people in the industry. But still, like for you to have to be like, okay, I did this and now I get to go do all of this again and go through all of that. And then where did you sign and what was that like as far as, you know, who is releasing this book or just released this book and where can they find this book?
So the engagement party, the publisher, you mean? Mm-hmm. So I was lucky to have sort of a duo deal, one for a US publisher and one for a UK. So I signed with Crooked Lane Books in the US and they got world rights. So then they sort of sent it off across the pond and I signed with Embla Books over there. And I don't know if it's pronounced Bonnier or Bonnier, but that's Embla Books is a part of Bonnier Books.
I'll have to ask my UK people. Maybe they know, but that sounds French. So French people tell us how that's pronounced, because I got nothing. I really wouldn't know either. I can't pronounce most of, like Les Miserables is one of my favorite musicals. I can't pronounce half the things in it. And then when I do, I'm doing it Cockney style from the because that's what I listen to. So I'm of no help for pronunciation most of the time. And like, if it's Spanish, I might be okay. English, probably not, because English makes no sense. And then French, I got nothing. Okay, so you got the double deal. Are you working on something new? Do you have something else that is going through Crooked Lane, or you have something that's going to be seen by them and then who knows?
Yes. So in my contract, there's a stipulation that they get sort of the first dips on the pitch for the next project that I'm working on. So my agent is looking over it's the first 50 pages in the synopsis. And I think it's like really close to getting sent off to Crooked Lane, and they'll take a look at it and we'll see how that goes. Like, it's interesting because getting this deal for this book was my first experience with that. And so you think I would feel more prepared going in for like a second.
You would be wrong.
It's totally different because they contractually get a first look at it. So there's a lot of like legal boundaries. But if they don't want it, then we go back on submission like we did with the first book, which took, I would say, a full year.
You were on sub for a year with that?
I think so, because it was like the pandemic, which slowed everything down. But I could be thinking about my first book, which died on submission. R.I.P.
R.I.P. first book. Now, was your first book also a thriller?
Yes, it was an Airbnb thriller, and it just was not good enough. Like, I can see that in retrospect, and it wasn't meant to be. And I think it did make, like, the second book a lot better because I was a little bit more honest with myself in terms of, like, what's working and what's not. And I think I got a little bit better at developing the characters as, like, more realistic people than rather like a trope of a person, which I think is what happened with the Dead book.
The Dead book, may it rest in peace. Well, I think it's amazing, first off, that you have the ability to step back and look at it and go, it didn't sell. I love this. I'm getting the line from my blinds. It's like blinding me, so I'll lean this way. You have the perspective to be able to say it didn't sell, and I can see why, because then you're able to take it and go, okay, this is what I need to do to make this next one better. But then you also have the ability to pull things out and go, oh, I really liked this. I can improve upon it and put it in this other book. I love the idea of an Airbnb thriller. I don't think I've ever read one, and Airbnbs are everywhere. This is totally off topic, but one of my children, my middle kid, her best friend for the first couple of years of elementary school, when the pandemic happened, their family took their kids out of school, as a lot of people did, because we had like this hybrid homeschooling thing where we were having online, and it did not work for a lot of kids with different learning styles. This particular family, they decided, well, we're just going to plain old homeschool so long as we've got to have them here anyway. We don't want to do the online thing. And they stuck with homeschooling. And then they opened an Airbnb in another area. And so it works for their lifestyle to go back and forth. And I was telling them, and I'm like, I would love to have a writer's retreat at their place. It's called the Vinyl. So anybody like looking for a cool place in Palm Springs, shout out to the Vinyl. I have not gotten to go there. I just live vicariously through the Instagram pictures because it looks so lovely. I'm like, I still want to go there. And I say, oh, I want to do a writer's retreat there. My 10-year-old in the back seat, I want to go too. I'm a writer. And I'm like, you do not understand why mommy needs to get away. And it's not that I don't love her, but the idea of like what you do on a family vacation is a little different than a writer's retreat. And my 10-year-old doesn't quite get that yet. And that's okay. But I love the idea of like having something happen at an Airbnb, because it's not a hotel and it's not somebody's house. And it's kind of
creepy.
I've never read a story set there. So I vote for you to pull parts of that out and untrope people and work on that again. I don't know if that's something you're already doing in this next book, because we can't tell.
I wish that I could talk about it more because I am very excited about it. But yeah, I do think it's not any relationship to the Airbnb, but I do think that I'm really good at coming up with these like hooks and pitches. I think a lot of people are, and that's why they think that they could write a book. But it's like the struggle for me comes with the plotting. It's like, okay, the twist is such a big thing with thrillers, and a lot of people are very dependent on the twist to make it, a 5-star versus a 1 or a 2.
Yeah, I think that's true for thrillers.
So there's just a lot of pressure on the plotting for thrillers. Whereas me, like, I start writing, it's like all vibes in the beginning. And that's really fun for me. It's just all vibes, no plot. And then I go back and I have to do the plot. And it's like,
well, it's something that people do want the plot, unless it's like, this is pure literary experimentalism. What's the plot about? Oh, there's no plot. It's just vibes and some really purple prose at one point, but and your prose is tight and it's crisp and it's vivid. It's never purple. So I think for thrillers, you're not allowed to do that. They would probably unpurple it in the edits. They're like, stop it, Finley. You can't wander off here. It's like,
you've described this chew for 5 pages. You need to take a step back.
We're gonna just pull some of that away. But you still had really good vivid descriptions. Everything from, there's a scene, and I don't, it's not a spoiler, but one of the characters walks in on one of the house people behind like a stack of towels, and later there's something like doing something with a laundry machine, and it was just so perfect in just a little detail, letting you know this is not like ours. I mean, I did have to get a new laundry machine this summer because ours died, and it had been dying for a while. Like, it was a kind that was dancing across the garage. Every time I had to push it back with that horrible scraping sound. And now we have a new one that sings to us, which really bothers me. It's like, do 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 do.
Yes, I know what you're talking about.
You're just an appliance. Stop making me think you're sentient. Just wash my clothes. But it's very lovely. So I'm like, oh, okay, I'll take it. But I feel like mine has a few buttons, and that one had a million, and I'm going, they are not like us.
Yeah, I like to add the smaller details that like pack a little bit more of a punch in terms of building up who the characters are and like what they're about, because so many people, including myself with a lot of things, are our items and our belongings reflect who we are, including how we dress and including how we decorate our house. Like if you're in a closet, maybe you're a little bit more relaxed of a person. I don't know.
Well, and it was funny because so before we went live, I was commenting when I was getting the pictures ready to go on the little thumbnail that goes on the podcast. Finley's picture, her hair is down and she's standing in front of the same circular thing, not the mirror, but the other thing that's behind her that's like has a picture frames, but the wall is a different color. I'm like, you painted your house, and she's like, I moved houses. And it's just that little kind of thing, like, okay, but I liked the blue wall. Can we have more blue walls? It's that kind of thing. Like, what color are their walls, and what kind of people are there? They have the thing that's very refined but don't touch, or do they have the kind of thing they can live in? And that's one of the things that you did really well with. There were a number of times when Cass, even before really bad things were happening, but just when there was this level of discomfort for her, and her wanting to be like, I want to be at a party where everyone's kind of sitting around drinking beer on an overstuffed couch, having a nice time, rather than whatever the heck this is, where everybody's sitting there drinking and leaving glasses around and gossiping about who this person is dating, how this person had their face done, and whether it aged them instead of making them like, I mean, just horrible people who are just tearing others down instead of enjoying each other's company. It's like, why do they party? Do they party to celebrate, or do they party as a symbol of their status? And that was made really clear. That's why they're here to party, that they didn't really care about like the fact that they weren't being even introduced as a couple. Like, here are Murray and Cassandra. Aren't they a lovely couple? It's like, no, here she is, and I'm showing her off, and he's over there meeting investors and all this stuff. And it's like, this is the worst party ever, except for the booze. And I'm sure the food was really good. I didn't hear as much about the food at the party. Maybe in like a reader special edition, you could add more food just for me, because I just like hearing about food. And there was plenty of food in other places, like what they were eating at the other meals. And I'm going, I would like some of that. Does that come with one of the special editions? Some of these chocolate croissants that were there, and the fresh fruit? That sounds really nice.
You know, it's funny. My editor actually asked me to add more food because she left a comment when we were editing. She was like, "These people have been drinking all day, and there's not a lot of food. Like, I'm worried."
Soak up that thing. They need to have something just like a sponge in there. So maybe a sponge cake, tasty cakes, or sponge cakes. Or
So that was a funny thing, like in the editing process, like things that they might notice that you don't. Like, I'm not a huge foodie, so I just wasn't thinking about it.
I am. So that's like the first thing I do. Like, even a rough draft of my story, it's like, oh, and here's me going on and on about what they're cooking or eating or what they're ordering for dinner instead of cooking. So
the pirate panties.
The pirate panties. I have yet to actually reference that in a book, because I would probably get sued by the cookbook people going, stop defaming our lovely parish and all these lovely women who all use their husband's first names instead of their own on their lovely crab dip or their etouffee. And look, I make some of the recipes in there, and that's how I can make my bananas fritters and all that stuff. And even though I splatter the grease everywhere, and I'm like, I just deep fried some bananas, they're really good. But again, I'm not allowed to cook because I burn myself most of the time, and so it's best if I don't cook for a crowd, so that if I've got to go to the hospital for another, like, okay, the grease splatter burn is off my arm now, so that's good. That was there for me. I'm just kind of a wreck, but I like food, and I like reading about food, and I feel like it rounds out the experience. And if they're drinking that much, you just worry about their livers and the food. Your editor was not wrong.
Yeah, she was definitely right to add that in. But I do in real life, unfortunately, I do know quite a few alcoholics, and they really don't eat that much.
Their calories are all liquid. And if they're functioning that way, they're like, I don't see why I would need to slow myself down.
Yeah. So like I tried to, like, you don't want to get really deep and heavy talking about, addiction and alcoholic, problems, but it's there. And I didn't gloss over it as if it's not important, but it's like something that they don't even think about. They have no idea that they have a problem.
No.
So it's realistic that they might not be eating that much, but logistically.
That's accurate. And even still having the food there, and the idea of it's just there, and these people who don't prepare the food themselves, the approach to food is very different when you're not the one who bought it, cooked it, prepped it, brought it out, have to clean it up afterwards. It just doesn't. I mean, it's kind of the way my kids are, where they're like, well, I don't know, I just picked it up and I don't really feel like eating this thing you made me, Mom. Can I have a cup of noodle? No, I don't. Fine, I'll make you a cup of noodle. Just please eat. But the idea of the food is as irrelevant as the workers in the town they live in, as the money that they just can throw at anything, really. And it's just not the kind of life that where Cass is coming from. All of this is a rude awakening. Whereas if there would have been somebody brought into the family who came from that lifestyle, it would have been like, oh, yes, of course, this is just how things are done. And this is why there are extra chairs in the bathroom. And I just always thought, I read that. I will not spoil too much more about that scene, but there are people who are doing extracurricular activities in one of the bathrooms during the party. And it's just funny to me because every women's place I've ever been to does have chairs. And I always just thought it's because anything from like your friend is getting ready and you're sitting down waiting for her and you want to rest your feet for a minute. Two, and I've had to do this, I have nursed in those bathrooms at times. And so having a nice chair is really nice because like the ladies lounge at the different churches I've been to and stuff, okay, there's a place where you can sit and nurse, as opposed to I did have a baby at a wedding, not my own wedding, but I was a bridesmaid and having to like take down the strapless dress and someone had to haul in a chair because it didn't have those.
Yeah.
And was it like sit on a toilet to do it? No, not really. But I couldn't do that in public because you know what I didn't have? I didn't have a nursing bridesmaid's gown. It was strapless and I would have been just like bearing it all. And I didn't want to be, you know, having wardrobe malfunctions at my friend's wedding. That would have been inappropriate. But the fact they're like, well, why do you think the chairs are in here? I'm like, I didn't think that.
Right. And it goes to show how like different types of people will look at the same room and think totally different things. Like, you know, you're a mother, I nurse too. So I would be thinking, how convenient.
I know. Be like, oh, look, it has arm places. That's good for putting the baby right here.
Yeah, like there's counter space so that I can, you know, clean my pump parts or whatever. You're washing your child's hands. No, these people are thinking about, you know, vices that you might do in a bathroom at a party.
Exactly. Well, or even I'm just thinking like, okay, well, if the door locks, then people could be doing other things in there. But I think some of those other things were being done in the hallway, honestly. Like people weren't even waiting for rooms. They're just like, oh, why are you walking by us? This guy has like 3 women here who all look very disturbed. What is even happening? I did not reread that sentence to figure out what was going on. Like, I don't need to know that stuff. Let's just see where Cass is going. Oh, yeah, that's fine. But yeah, you had that. And you have everybody having all the worst behaviors at the party, including one of the characters possibly doing something with someone who is not their spouse. I won't say more than that. But Cass sees some stuff that she's like, I wish I could scrub my eyes out now. I didn't need to know any of this. And then, of course, a dead body, which is kind of like, well, party's over now. And then some people are like, well, I'm not staying and they can't make us stay. It's like, you guys, you're all kind of suspects. Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, that goes back to the like rich people think they're above the law. Sometimes like they just were like, you can't tell me what to do, even though you're a cop. And they don't listen. Like, I think that's pretty realistic.
Well, and honestly, what are you going to do? The cops aren't going to be sitting there drawing their weapon going, you can't leave. And especially when there's like, 200 people at a party? What are they going to do? They can't arrest all of them. And hopefully they at least get the names of who's there and they can find out and chase people down as needed. But I mean, yikes. I can't think of honestly a better place. Not that I plot murder often, Finley, but having a party like that seems like it's almost the perfect place because everybody has an alibi and nobody has an alibi because you can never pin down the moment of death to a second unless it's caught on video. It's always gonna be a window of time. And even if you saw somebody through most of the party, nobody's like all just sitting there together. Everybody's moving around. It would be not okay. I'm totally like plotting a crime here. I should stop. I'm not
keep going. Let's write a book together.
But yeah, like seriously, I'm just going, everybody's moving around. So just thinking people are saying, oh, well, we didn't know where she was for part of it. She was always being seen by different people, but you'd have to then line up every single person. And assuming anybody's even taking track of when they saw them, oh yeah, they're all wearing their wristwatches on one and then downing the bourbon. I'm sure they're all excellent, historians and timekeepers of all of this. But
yeah, it is sort of, it has the tropes of, a game of Clue, an Agatha Christie murder mystery, but I was hoping that I could take that inspiration and make it a little bit more modern, maybe more realistic to what a crazy party would be like these days. Not that I've ever been to a party with people that rich, but one can use their imagination, especially like if you've been to really nice weddings. But I'm not saying this party is based off of somebody's wedding. Or yeah, nobody
tell me
was
later.
I swear it wasn't.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, these are crazy events. So trying to figure out who was where, it's difficult. But Finley, you are amazing, and your book was so much fun to read. So folks, it is out already. Go and grab it. It's The Engagement Party. Look for Finley's name, because The Engagement Party there's more than one book with that. So look for Finley Turner. Just type in Finley.
Yes. Oh, there was a whole panic moment with that too.
Well, and when I went and looked it up, I'm like, oh yeah, there's another one by that. My first book, Dibs, there are other books with it too. So I always told people, look for the bourbon. And now we're talking about changing the cover. I'm like, well, what do I tell them to look for now? Because the bourbon was really easy to find. Also, yes. I like bourbon, and they're called the Bourbon Books. So that worked. But you look for your name. Finley Turner is easy enough to remember. You can.
And I will.
Oh, show it to us. Ooh, very pretty. Yeah, it's way bigger than my ring, I'm telling you now.
Yeah,
not really wearing it, but still. But Finley, we are cheering you on, and hopefully we'll hear some good news soon for that second book, and then you can whisper the details to me after.
Yeah, I'll tell you.
You're under contract. You can't be doing that live. They will yell at you. So,
yeah.
Folks, we're so happy that Finley could join us and extra break that rule today about, there was some romance, and there was nothing speculative. Everything that happened could have happened. There was no and then the zombies. It was very believable and very well written. So
no happily ever after, though.
Oh, sorry. Oops. Forgot that part with the dead body. Oops. That's fine. But we're cheering you on. Next month, I have Cadwell Turnbull coming on it's the sequel to No Gods, No Monsters, called We Are the Crisis. I cannot wait to have him on. I loved his first book. I stalked him publicly, and he agreed to come on my show. I don't really know why. Apparently, he wasn't paying attention to me stalking him, saying, please come on my show. And he just said, sure. And so that will be next month in December. But tomorrow we have another episode of Vox Vomitus with one of my agency siblings, Devery Bryn Donaldson, with a lovely book entitled You're Gonna Die Alone.
Oh, gosh.
It's humorous. It is meant to be taken tongue-in-cheek, and it says You're Gonna Die Alone and other excellent news. So join us tomorrow at our normal Vox time, which is 11, versus today we are an hour early to accommodate nap time. We should be quiet, Finley.
Thank you so much for doing that.
We are so happy to have you, and we're cheering you on. And everybody go out, look for The Engagement Party by Finley Turner. It's out right now from Crooked Lane, and we will see you guys next time. Bye.
Thank you so much. Bye.